And we were going to kind of pass and hold it. I kept walking away yesterday from the mic and said, go back. I'm Mary Perron, and of course you know that. And this is my dear friend and creative partner, Mary Love, who you may not have met yet if you weren't in the assembly. But I keep calling it the assembly. I don't know what to call it, but it reminds me of high school. What?
Is that your real last name?
Perron?
Love.
It is.
Yes.
I just had to marry him. I mean, he just said his name and I said, I'm yours.
That answered the question.
Well, how many were in the assembly? Which I say, you know, it's like high school where you go to the gym, you know.
Yeah, but she didn't get enough time.
Huh?
Or she didn't get enough time to talk.
She didn't have time. That's right. You're exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. You want to introduce yourself a little bit? She said you didn't have time to talk.
Well, I will be talking, Mary. I'm kind of the oral tradition, so when I threw when my notes fluttered to the floor yesterday, all I could say was, if you want to join us and know us, we would love it. I'm so glad you're here. Once again, Mary Love, thank you.
Thank you. I got to hear the end. Doesn't she have a great voice? I love her voice. And we're so different, and we talk about that a lot because it's like she's from the oral tradition. She's so comfortable with speaking. I'm of the written tradition, and I get a little bogged up sometimes with the oral, but one of the funnest things about being here this year is how people are telling me I've changed. It's really kind of fun. It's like the first day I ran into a woman in the elevator, and she said, well, you were so shy last year. I said, I was. You know? Anyway, I've had like 3 comments on, you've changed, you know, like, and so I hope that's true, because I feel like I've kind of stepped into my power. And I was thinking this morning, you know how times of your life and songs all go together? And I was thinking of When You're 64, the Beatles song. My husband and I danced to that at our wedding, and I'm 64. And I thought, it's high time to step into my power, right? You know? And it's looking back and being here and seeing the progress of a couple of years, and even having people witness to it, it's like it really made me begin to think about our potential. Jesus says, potential is that which exists. That's what we are, what exists. That potential exists on us. It kind of waits for us to bring it into completion, you know. But I thought mainly of how there is only one Mary Love in this whole world. There will never be another one like her. There will never be another one like me. There will never be another combination like we share. And the same is true for all of us. We are so unique, and we are so blessed with that. That's one of the things I see as a major difference in A Course of Love, is that we're looking at our humanity potential that's right here, right now, and that we're growing into this and becoming so much more than we have thought ourselves to be, but also retaining our individuality. And it has a great part to play in what is going to happen in our lives and in the future. And I've always felt this sort of sense of destiny with Mary because of the way that we came together and how improbable it is. And I'll let you say a little bit of that because I actually have a drink of water.
Okay. Well, I can't remember everything. Mari and I live so much in the present, we completely forget what happened yesterday. So forgive me if I'm repeating myself or Mari. We don't know where one begins and one ends anymore. But did you say, I know at one point point you had said our mothers had been friends, and then we met through our mothers. And it was really through my sharing this journal of this young woman with Mari when I was first married, because I knew she was a writer, knew that words and the story were so important to her. And I'd heard of her for years, but never had met her. So that formed some creative bond for both of us.
And you know, when Mary looked up, she's kind of sitting on the floor and I'm on the couch, and she looked up at me and and she said, because my mom told her mom I was a writer, and she looked up and she said, "You're a writer." And it was a statement. And it meant so much to me at that time, because it's hard to believe in yourself as a writer when you're starting out, yeah. And a thought kind of went through my mind of how writing received my pain. And it was the only place that I had to go with my pain. And eventually, Mary and I were able to share our pain. And that's been an experience that's part of the experience that made us so close, to be able to do that. Then there were other, just to fulfill this time of destiny, besides our mothers. So after that one meeting with her, where she looked up and said, "You're a writer," I invited her to come to work with me at the University of Minnesota. I had been a single parent, and it was like I was just beginning to get back to the potential I thought I had when I was young, that being a single parent kind of took me away from. I thought I had lost my chance to be who I wanted to be. And suddenly, being at a good job, it was like, ooh, and having just made everything come back to life, and I was able to go to classes at the U and all those things. And now I forgot where but so I invite Mary. We have this job opening. After one meeting, I invite her to come, and then I to come and apply for this job, and she got the job. But I was just thinking recently, this was not like going to the drugstore. This was the university. So even though I wanted her, even though she came in and interviewed and my boss okayed her, that she was able to get this job was really kind of a phenomenon. And then the next thing,
you don't know why things happen, but with the arc of our lives and our ages right now, we're really seeing this connectivity. But after I started working, like 2 weeks into the job, my husband decided we should get a house. And so I looked when he was working and, found something, and then he fell in love with our 1928 home. And the next, I think Monday, I told Mari that we had found a house, and I described where it was in St. Paul. And she looked at me really funny, and she said, "I think you're a block away from me."
And she had no idea where that was. So there were, this just kind of set it up in the way that I really feel there is sort of a destiny to our lives. And sometimes at this age, as we get older, we start to look back and to see the things that have led us to where we are, and the things that are about our potential to be more than who we are, and all those experiences that enlighten us to who we are. And with A Course of Love, the thing is, you can't share the book. It's like the book, you have to share all of who you are to share the essence of A Course of Love. This is the way I feel. It's the way Jesus has talked to me. And it's like, I always want to go back to my notes and speak about the book, because I'm a writer partially, and it's like the ideas and the incredible truths in it. And of course I'm going to talk about them. But there's a difference in talking about the book and talking from your whole being. And that's kind of what I am hoping to demonstrate with Mary and I, what we are hoping to demonstrate, is sharing out of our beings instead of sharing out of a book. Because, A Course of Love takes us on a great movement. It begins with identity. Completely and totally begins with identity. Jesus says, in A Course in Miracles, you started to let go of the ego. And now, I'm going to clue you in on who you really are. I want you to know your true identity. And he's speaking to each of us. He's not speaking about an identity that's like, you're not human, or human, or it's each of us exactly who we are, that potential in each of us, our uniqueness, our talents, our gifts. It's like without that, without realizing that, and that those are givens. These are the givens of our lives, who we are born to be, that we give back to the world. So that's one of the things I wanted to share. And it causes vulnerability. Sharing from who we truly are causes vulnerability. And even when Mary and I were trying to kind of get coordinated about coming here, sharing as who we really are was, we were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I kept wanting to write because I'm a writer, and she kept saying, I was kind of boxing it in. We wanted to be fluid, and I was like, I know, we just want to talk like we always do, which for 20 years now, over 20, we've been, of course, first we worked together, but when we quit working together, we started seeing each other once a week. Vulnerabilities already. And I'll let Mary tell you a little bit about that.
Well, I'm going to skip a few years here in terms of, well, actually it was going back to the beginning. But I had lost a young daughter at 5 weeks. She had 7 surgeries within 5 weeks. And I began, Mari talks about writing, getting her pain out through writing. I began to carry a notebook with me because I didn't think she would die. And so I would write these things that were happening so she could read it later and know how much we loved her. And 5 weeks later, she passed away. Now, Grace, my daughter, we had gone to the hospital. She had an AV malformation, which means blood was shunting to her heart. It enlarged her heart. The surgeons described it as a river. So her heart began, and we got a call one night. We'd just gotten back from the hospital, and one of the surgeons called. He was Italian. He goes, "We can't save her, we can't save her." Got in the car right away, went back, she lived. But this is kind of what we were living through. Our daughter Grace died. We didn't know she was going to die that day, but they have a room for parents to lay down. And my husband said, "Mary, you have got to rest. You are not getting sleep." And my dad and my husband John were in this room holding Grace. And I fell asleep for some odd reason in this parent sleeping room. I didn't want to go. I had protested, and he just insisted that I lay down for a bit. And all of a sudden, all my muscles became paralyzed, and I had this feeling of velocity, like I was zooming through something. So it was dark. I heard noises. I kept trying to rouse myself. I couldn't do it. The velocity picked up. And then I felt John touch me, and he said, "She's gone. Grace is gone." It's the first time I heard myself moan, and then tears came. I didn't associate moaning with this kind of situation at all. I went, I held Grace, and it was the first time I felt like I had put a nail in my own coffin because I couldn't forgive myself for not being there. It just was so powerful. And John was with her at her time of transition with my dad. And John said he had a daughter from a former marriage, and he said Gracie had her fingers around my thumb just like Amanda used to. And my dad, and he said she went into this great arch, this arc. We just saw it, felt it. And my dad said, we touched eternity. So this is where my unforgiveness began, that I hadn't been witness to this. And I will tell you how A Course of Miracles moved into my life. Do you want to? I was in such a state. And Mari had gotten 20 copies of A Course in Miracles. 2 of them were for our mothers. I said yesterday, my mother said, the print is so tiny and the page is so thin. And I said, well, Mom, try, give it a go. But I began to read, and I would prop in my living room a picture of my daughter, several pictures. I lit a fire in the fireplace. I lit candles, and I began to read A Course in Miracles. And it was like a church for me. And I just entered this zone. But I didn't know how much was penetrating either. And then I read the sentence, you come here to heal. You, from A Course in Miracles, you come here to heal. It rushed into me so quickly, I thought it meant right here, right now, this moment. And I kept rereading this line because I thought the words might disappear, that it was unfathomable for me. Because I thought I would have to die, and then my healing would come. That I would die, and then my healing would come. And that was the beginning of my healing. And I'm forever grateful for that. So, I don't know if I have any more, but anyway, I'll throw it in there.
When we were talking this morning, all these memories come back.
Yeah.
And I said, we began, after Grace died, we began to have a spiritual journey. And it was sort of that absolute height of vulnerability for Mary, and just kind of trying to be as gentle and let her have space, but also be there for her. And I remember one time telling her, there weren't very many pictures of the time of Grace's life, and there was one that Mary shared, and I said, you don't even look like yourself. And she got kind of mad at me. And I felt really bad about that.
Oh, no. Well, I wasn't myself, and I would never be that woman again. Something had happened to me. A doorway had opened through vulnerability and through love. And they're so keenly linked. I'll go into that later.
And just in terms of to be with another person in their grief is a really beautiful thing to be, and a really vulnerable thing. And it's like it brings up things in both of you. And one of the particular things, Mary had waited to have a child. She has a child. And in terms of myself, I thought, I never had my kids under the best of circumstances. I couldn't do my best as a single parent. I had reason for blame. Mm-hmm. But it was like in being together and talking of these things together, it sort of neutralized that. We began to suspend our judgment of ourselves, which is the biggest judgment that we have.
Well, I needed a few more miracles to, really feel that. But that was the opening. That was truly, yes.
And this morning, the thing I remembered, so we began to read spirituality, and angel books were pretty big then, and there was one by the angel Emmanuel. Does anybody remember that? And Emmanuel said, you never lose who you are. It was like, when you die, you don't, get rid of the old self. And I was like, shit. I really was. I was like, I always thought of death as the great escape in a way. You could escape who you were and start all over, or, you know, I don't know what, but it was like, I can just remember that being the startling thing to me, that you don't get to escape where you've been, you know, oh no. So it's just these, like these memories that come up, which is why I've got the you know, like when you're 64th and going on.
I should share, and maybe you want to say something. Did you say you had begun communication with an angelic presence? Do you want to say that?
Do I want to say that? Yeah, so in that time, this was one of the early parts of, this has sort of been, in my view, a mystical experience, a journey really very deep into spirit. And it started for me on Holy Thursday in church when I had my first, it was a nighttime thing with the washing of the feet, and they had a period of silence and candles, and I had my first vision of an angel. And then I began, that was so April, you know, Holy Thursday, and in May 1st, I began to hear from the angel Peace. And that was a startling experience. And the funny thing is, all these things sort of embarrassed me at the beginning. I was like so shy about sharing, like, and because our mothers are friends, Barry comes into work one day and she says, "Your mom was over at my mom's house," and I said, "Oh, Mari and the angel writing," and I said, "You told my mother?" You know?
Her mother, Madeline, said, "Oh my."
So we had this great experience at work going, and you know, being able to share a spiritual journey and all of that. And then I had a dream, and my dream told me, now I'm not much of a prophetic dreamer, and I don't know, but you know, when a dream hits you, it hits you. It's not like you have a dream that fades away and you try to bring it back, but it's like a dream that really means something to you, kind of stays with you. So I had this dream that told me I could no longer sell my mind for money, my mind belonged to God. And it just kind of kept going around and around in my brain, and I didn't really want to leave my job, but after 8 months I did. And another 8 months went by, and I kept thinking some work for God was going to show up. Just, you know, and I tried to put myself in position for that, and you know, nothing was coming, and we were poor. We were, you know, getting more and more broke. And I thought, all right, I'm going to have to go back to work. So another 8 months later, and then Mary brought me her prophetic dream. She is a true prophetic dreamer. You know, these things about, I think A Course of Love is a prophetic work. I really do. Because we're going to talk about the new future in just a minute here. And they also, I mean, prophetic dreamers filled the Bible, you know, angels filled the Bible. And Mary had a prophetic dream.
You know, I can have a dream, but it does not mean it's for me. If I share my dreams, I know when it's directed at myself, but when I share my dreams, which we always did, we had a dream update, and we would have our weekly meeting, and I had a dream, and I told Mari when she settled down and the coffee was on the table.
This was her birthday, by the way.
Oh, it was my birthday too, November 25th. I said, Mari, you're not going to believe this. I don't know why, but I had a dream of a new Course in Miracles. That's how it was shown in the dream. Can you hold this?
Yes.
Oh, and in the dream, I saw 4 books that were stacked. I saw the color of the covers, and they went like this in rapid succession, up high on the 4 books. And that was the end of the dream. But because of Mari's devotion to A Course in Miracles and my entry point with healing and moving through that, it seemed relevant somehow. I had no idea that she was expecting something to come.
And it wasn't like instantaneous. I felt an impact when she told me the dream, but I didn't start going, oh, that's it, immediately. But within a few days, I began to get the guidance that was what was going to happen. And A Course of Love began. So her birthday was November 25th, and on December 1st, A Course of Love came. And I had just gone to my writing room and made myself ready, and was ready as you can for something that you don't know. And this is, the unknown is so incredible. I mean, we never know. We never know what awaits us, and we never know when we're asked what's going to come of it. But we step into the unknown every time we try something new, and that's this incredible vulnerability. And that's the way I felt, I would say, when I sat down and wondered, and is something going to come? And then it began to come. This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course. The time for you to take it is now. And in that very first prelude of A Course of Love, he begins to talk about our identity, our true identity, and how that's why he's bringing us another course, so that we can know who we truly are. So that's how it began. And I would just, I was enveloped. You know, in my time with Mary, there was this phrase that I would say, it was like, this is it, and I am in it. I don't know, you know, it just came, that's how it felt. This is it, and I am in it. And then with the receiving from Jesus, it was the same thing. This is it, and I am in it. And then later when I received the embrace, it was kind of like, this is it, and I am in it. It's sort of that feeling of the embrace, you know. And it was, so heart-opening. It was just amazing. And Mary was into other things at that time and did not choose to, read A Course of Love or be with me on A Course of Love.
I was still into A Course in Miracles. I had other actual experiential things that were happening. So anyway, that, just to make that a bit clear. Okay.
But, you know, it didn't feel good at the time, but the thing is, what we learned over the years also was to always stand in our truth. And that we could stand in our truth and follow our own paths. And that's been really integral to us. And then we began to weave. That's the exciting thing, is you begin to weave with, if you have a close enough relationship. And this is really my whole view of A Course of Love, is it's all about relationship. And that was the biggest thing I took away from A Course in Miracles, was holy relationship. And I wanted so much to share in holy relationship. I already knew I had holy relationship with Mary, and I asked her and our other friend to join me in that. But that was the biggest healing, to know that there is such a thing, because it already felt so important to me. Our relationships with each other, our relationships with self, our relationships with God. I knew that. I already knew that. And I wanted to share with you too. It's like, this is what I've discovered, is we already know. What we come to know, you know, it's like, the reason it's so exciting is we go, oh, you know, it's like, I already knew that. Something in us. You know, like when Jesus says in A Course in Miracles, talks about our thoughts, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, that's how I think, you know. And then when he talks about our gifts, and just be this igniting of, oh, I already knew that. I already knew my gift was needed in the world, you know. No.
After Mari began receiving, she had really witnessed what I went through after the death of my daughter. But I began to witness who she was during this 3-year process. So in a nutshell, she wore one long braid for 3 years. She did not change that. She began, you used the word enveloped. It felt like a pulling away for me as a friend, where she went deeper and deeper and deeper. We met every week, sometimes twice a week. She never really shared what she was writing, but I would say, I had a dream. And she'd go, Mary would go, I just wrote that. And so we had this connectivity that was sprinkled throughout our relationships. You all have probably, when you're married or very close to another person, there is no boundary. You know, you step out of time and you meet somewhere. And so this happened to us. So it wasn't as if I wasn't a participant, but I was a witness to what she went through. I worried she wasn't grounded. I worried that she wasn't eating right. She got very thin. And both of these experiences that we went through, we both aged like almost overnight. When my daughter died, half my hair turned white within 3 weeks. Half of it.
Was that Mary was feeling that she had to have done something wrong. And I knew she was blameless. I knew there was nothing she had done wrong. But in terms of myself, you know, Mary had waited to have a child. She has a child. And in terms of myself, I thought, you know, I never had my kids under the best of circumstances. I couldn't do my best as a single parent. I had reason for blame. But it was like in being together and talking of these things together, it sort of neutralized that. We began to suspend our judgment of ourselves, which is the biggest judgment that we have. Really began to appreciate vulnerability, really did, and Jesus talks about that in A Course of Love, not greatly. He speaks of the time of tenderness, and he speaks of the time of tenderness as a time of healing. And when I first entered some spiritual circles, this didn't seem to be as acceptable as, you know, if you're with a couple of people, if you're with a few friends and they really get you, you're able to get that full range of being allowed to feel what you feel, even if it's anger. You know, and that's there. Every emotion we have felt over these different experiences that we've had, and yeah.
I had a vision one night. We have a little balcony in the back of our 1928 home, and I was feeling so horrible about things. I just couldn't get out of this pain. I had begun to heal, but I wasn't quite there. And I saw what I called a ribbon of emotion, a ribbon of feeling, every human feeling known to each of us just showed up in the sky. The sun was setting, the stars are starting to come out, and underneath that came love. Love picked this up, and all of it merged and dissolved into love. So I knew this is what Mari can write so beautifully, but this is my way. We all have our ways in which we receive, but this was part of my healing as well.
She's the beauty with words. I am blanking out this morning. I'm just going to tell you that. So I'm going to see if I am. It's just like, I was on yesterday and today I'm like, okay, what was I going to say? So please excuse me. I'm going to look at my notes.
Do you need help?
Yes, I know you are. I know you are.
Okay, we want to say a lot of these notes come actually from dialogue. Yes. And dialogue is where we meet in this place where creativity begins. And we come from disparate points of view and we merge somewhere. So we have
our first notes for today were written on I wrote my first note on a paper plate.
And I wrote on napkins.
So it was very casual. And this is the way of the new. But I am still giving up the old way, and this has really caused some big adjustments for me. You know, it's like I want to do my paper. I want to have it all organized when I'm, you know, and this giving up of the old way is also what A Course of Love is about. It's so odd, but really it's the undoing. And I have this memory of, in this time, I've had a lot of memories of my teenager years come up. And I had this memory of a fight I had with my mom. And we were standing in her kitchen. It's 1970. The walls were peach with a pattern on them, wallpapered. The curtains were white with a ruffle. I can remember exactly what she was wearing. I can see her gray pants, her red shirt with plaid. I can remember everything except what the fight was about. I have absolutely no idea what the fight was about. I don't think it mattered, and she's standing there like this, and I'm facing her, and I say, I just want to be who I am. And she, who's stopping you? And so, as I feel like I'm in an in-between time, and I'm going to bring that forward to the way of Jesus and the way of Mary that are talked about in A Course of Love, because we have an old way that's kind of leaving, and we have a new way that's coming on. And I believe that's part of what I'm feeling and why these teenage memories are coming up. Because when you're a teenager, you are rebelling for a reason. You are feeling stifled for a reason, often, even if your parents are fantastic parents, because you do, as exactly what you want. You want to be who you are, not necessarily who your parents think you should be, or who society thinks you should be, or who they think you should be in your school. You want to be something you can't even define, but you have a sense. And that's what this time is like for me. I have a great sense of the new. I have a sense of this potential in each of us. I have a sense that if we are alive in this time, we are part of the coming of the new. And that is a huge thing. And we are part of it whether we recognize it or not. But if we recognize it, we have a much greater potential to be an active part of it. And it's got so much to do with consciousness. What is coming in now, what is going back out. There's a great quote that in A Course of Love, which I probably can't remember, but and this is maybe something that you'll find, because the quote explains it to me, and I've been really worried about this, and I can't remember things, but he says that you let go the particular, you let go the particular, and you hang on to the relationship. And that is what has been happening. It's like the particulars, the details, all those kinds of things, the quotes, the meaning of this word is, all those things begin to go. They're gone. That's the undoing. It's like this isn't high school anymore. Your high school days, even if you love them, you don't want to go back, do you? It's like it's time to go forward. And this is the feeling for me, that who's stopping you? So after remembering that, it was like, why is this memory coming back in this strong way? And I knew I was 15 in 1970 because otherwise I would have driven away from this fight. You know, I would have gotten in my car and I would have barreled out of there, but instead I knew I was 15 because I walked. I had left the house, I walked, and that was my way always of dealing with fights. I would just barrel up to the park with my legs, you know, and just work it out of me, because you have to do something to kind of work out that part that's telling you you can't be who you are. Somebody else is stopping you from being who you are. And so this is going to lead into my Course in Miracles quote that I wanted to share as part of healing, which is a little bit of an unusual one, because in this day and time, what I have begun to feel holds me back, sort of like my teenage at that feeling of stifledness is the details. It's like what someone else expects me to be, what someone else expects me to do, the obligations, the deadlines, the communications in this communication age. You always have, people expect you to respond right away because you have the capacity, And so it's like I have felt kind of under the weight of these things. And then I get mad and I blame the whole world. It's like, this is just the freaking way the world works now. And I'm just at the mercy of it. Or it's this person who asked something of me or whatever, all to work my way back to, no, I can't blame anybody else. I have to take responsibility. It's me. The only one who's stopping me is me. And Jesus says this too. He says, the only one, is this the exact same words? The only one who's stopping you is you. The only permission you ever needed was your own. That's a quote from Jesus in A Course of Love. But the one in A Course in Miracles, because this has been sort of plaguing me, this organizational kind of thing lately, was receive instead of plan. Okay, so I think I'm really a good receiver, and I'm thinking, okay, but I got something wrong on the planning end. So I decided to go back to A Course in Miracles and find out where that saying originated. What was the context around it? Does anybody know the ending of that sentence? Receive instead of plan. This is a great one. I am so grateful for A Course in Miracles still to this day. Receive instead of plan so you can give instead of organize. Wouldn't that be healing? Wouldn't that be the most healing thing you could imagine? And giving it, receiving is giving and receiving. There's no receiving with that. There's two always with receiving.
Yes.
There are always two. Self and God, self in relationship, self in relationship to self. That's kind of what writing is to me, self in relationship to self. So you have to have that giving and receiving. And I want to just say a word about what receiving was like for me, because I've never felt like I have been able to describe it very well. I couldn't find the right words. And for some reason, this word came into my mind just recently, so I'm not going to say a lot, but the word was profound. It was a profound experience. And I thought of, when do you use the word profound? It was a profound quiet. It was a profound grief. It was a profound truth. It was a profound dream. It's like profound, that word just seems to go with something that is a little bit otherworldly.
It also has found in it as part of it. So all these life situations, I just thought of that when you began to speak. It has been found in it.
And actually, let's go from there. So I don't need to say too much more about that. You can ask me questions as we're over, but I loved that feeling and of finding a word that kind of spoke to me about it and might speak to you about what receiving feels like to you. Maybe every time you say, oh, that was profound, you've received something, And the other words are so important. So what Mary and I were talking about when we were talking about vulnerability, she discovered something about that word.
Before, I've learned that I just can't tinker with my spirit. I have no control over it. When it's gonna come, it's gonna come. I was driving Mari crazy because she's go, what are you gonna say? What are you gonna say? And I said, I mumble some
3
things.
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I mumble some things, and the organizer, I call her the architect, and she can put things together like no other person. And I was driving her nuts, and then I began to hear this almost drum beat, and I'm like praying to Jesus, I need some help here, anything. What do you got? That thing. And then I began to hear the word beauty. when I hear something 3 times, I know that there's a message included in it. And then in our dialogue, the word vulnerability came up. We're trying to plan for this dialogue we're having with you right now. And the word vulnerability, I actually never knew what it meant until I looked it up. And it means the wound. So the next day, I met with Mari again. So things were beginning to come to me. And I said, you can't believe what happened to me. Vulnerability means the wound. Beauty is of the spirit and divine. Vulnerability is about an opening to what we possibly may have hidden and haven't been able to bring forth. And if we do, we become very shaky about bringing it forth because we don't know if someone will understand us or be able to unite with us.
I am receiving from Holy Mary, Mother Mary, on the way of Mary. And that's been going on since August. And during this receiving, during Holy Week, it was at its strongest. It was I really I cleared my schedule during Holy Week so that I could just be there and observe Holy Week. And she talked about the day that we hear of Mary Magdalene washing, with the oils, and the guys are saying, oh, what are you using that expensive oil for, But what she said was what Mary Magdalene did because she knew, she had a knowing. She anointed him where his wounds were coming. She anointed his head. She anointed his hands. She anointed his feet. And she said if not for decorum, she would have anointed his side. And then I also remembered I'm a Catholic, and sometimes there are these wonderful priests. I love Catholic writers like Thomas Merton, Richard Rohr. I had a wonderful parish priest, and he talked about Jesus coming back with his wounds. That he came back and showed his wounds. Had Thomas put his finger in his palm. And there is something about this, and even I could go back to the Emmanuel book of coming back with who you are. Maybe, we don't have to, maybe healing doesn't mean that these wounds that are sometimes the contributors of our greatest gifts, your broken heart, my broken heart, Mary's broken heart, all these things are what bring out so often the essential seed of who we are. And that's my favorite part of A Course of Love. Jesus saying, I want you to know who you are. Like, this is how we're going to heal. It's like you can't heal if you don't know who you are. And it seems like it kind of works the other way too, but it's like, if anybody ever told you to look at healing in a certain way and you're like, that doesn't feel like it fits me, but I'll give it a try. It's like you have to, it's like there's something about this knowing who you are that is essential to everything.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, please.
When you first said vulnerability,
I heard the word womb instead of wound. But I knew that was a message. I didn't know where you were going. But I wrote both down. And
that's true.
Yeah, and it
The
brings you
womb
back
is
to
our
the
birth.
womb. I had to share that.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a gift.
Anybody else? Please just tell me if you have the great things to share.
No, I have the same message.
Well, I will tell you, at receiving Way of Mary, I started to have this womb thing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
no,
but I mean,
no,
it's like,
I'm
and I'm
listening.
like, okay, what's going on here? You know, just this, but a definite feeling of a fullness in the womb. This is, I mean, we are birthing new life.
Yes.
This is really what we're
Yes.
doing.
Exactly.
And this is it. We are it. We're the new life
Yes.
we're birthing. This is the new time we are here to birth. So it's a, go ahead, Mary.
No, you're when we begin to babble, we pass the mic. So there is a transition. It's called the babble. I can't. I have to confess, and I ask Mari's forgiveness. I did not read A Course of Love for 18 years. I was having my own experiences. I was reading A Course in Miracles. Here we are, through osmosis, sharing on a certain level. But I had my hands full. I had A Course of Miracles. I was moving through healing. I have to tell you a couple experiences really quickly. I began to have experiences that were teaching me and demonstrating who I truly was. After my daughter died, I left my body 3 times. I knew where my spirit was. The next day, evening, my husband and I were in the kitchen making spaghetti. And I said, honey, I just have to tell you, I think I left my body last night. Well, I did leave my body, putting spaghetti in the hot boiling water. He said, Mary, it's natural. Don't worry about it. And then, during this course, I remember, of course, being above my body, seeing my body. I knew who I was, and who I was where my spirit was. When I was out of body, I knew who I was. I didn't have the same attachment to the body. But I looked at it as, I would say, a point of interest, like you would look at a billboard or something as you drive by. But once I was in the body, but I felt as Mary. I felt I knew who I was. And then I began to see light everywhere. Mari would show me her writing. I saw gold light around the writing. And I began to change light bulbs, thinking my vision was altering, and that didn't help. And then a couple of days later with my own writing, by the way, which became the Book of Grace, and A Course in Miracles is really predominant throughout that book. That's what I was doing in conjunction with our friendship. It was a trilogy. But I began to see light in our bedroom. One night I counted 14 spirals of light, moving light that was in the bedroom after my daughter died. What this was beginning to reveal to me was that there was something beyond what I knew. Then I'd been keeping a baby journal that became very holy after a while. You can't help but have that happen. And Mari invited me to church on Good Friday. I went, it was beautiful. She's always getting me to take a trip somewhere. You know, here I am, but we're always going somewhere together.
Well, my husband is Lebanese and part of a Maronite church, and they have this service on Holy Friday where the women, usually the men chant, that's when the women are crying for the baby. Mary crying for her Habibi, her baby. And it was like, I remember sitting in church, Mary came a little bit after I was thinking, I don't know if this was smart or not. You know, I thought it would maybe be healing, but.
So that night we leave the church. It's a bright, deep, velvety, dark blue sky. The stars were shining, just twinkling, and I was so moved by this service. And I usually do my spiritual writing at night. I get up every night after my daughter died and write from 2 to 4. It's the only time that spirit will come to me. But that night I put my pajamas on, I went into my creative space, and I had been in communication with what I would consider an angelic presence named Trinity. I have so many conversations. Well, I included the Holy Spirit and everything because the Holy Spirit had become my ally. it was so profound for me to have the concept of being able to heal and having an ally with me. I love that. I didn't feel alone. But I began to write, and in that writing, for the first time, I heard the words, "Mama, I am with you now." 2 years after the death of my daughter, I began to cry. I thought I might be going crazy. And after I recovered and I went through the next day and tried to make contact with her, she came and I began to ask her every question I had about suffering and healing, because she came from me. She came as part of me. I never knew her linguistically. I never knew her voice. But here this little baby spirit was talking to me and telling me things to soothe my pain, to help me understand what was actually going on. And I just clung to that, and I thank Mari so much on this special night. That was a night, I didn't know I had forgotten that it was about the Habibi. And so that I just learned when we came to Boston. So these are the types of things that we're connected with. But I want to move on to just another quick little situation. I had been doing this intense, as Mari was into A Course of Love, I had begun, my writing really kicked up a notch. And I began to have different communications. And because I don't know why it comes to me this way, but this came to me. One day I was writing, everything stopped for me. Every thought left my mind. It was like a silver screen with no thought. I didn't know if I should panic at that time. I didn't know if freak out was a spiritual term, but I knew something was happening to me. Then in the next moment, everything, not only had something merged in my mind and it went blank, but everything in my body began to merge and become one. Everything. And so that, I'm going to leave you with that thought, which will take me to 2018.
Well, we're actually getting close to being out of time. And I probably haven't said as much as you would have liked me to say, particularly things about A Course in Miracles or A Course of Love. But I am so proud and honored to share this story with you all, and with vulnerabilities. And but I do want you to be able to ask questions. There was one final thing, because I wore this so that we could tell this story. Yeah. Of those connections that we have.
When Mari was at CMC last year in San Francisco, I woke up, it was Sunday morning. I knew I was going to be editing video for her, and we had kind of texted back and forth. And on my dresser, it was like light shone on my dresser. It made a straight line, beeline right for the dresser, and I saw this pendant. And I'm thinking, this is Holy Mary. And so I began, through a series of events that day, one thing after another began to happen to me. One of them was that I began to have a thought in my mind about a book called The Bloodline of the Holy Grail, which had to do with Mary Magdalene, okay? And so I am frantic, I can't find this book. I don't even know if I finished it. And I went online to Amazon and I looked, I needed a book on Mary Magdalene. So finally I find Jean Leloup, who had studied the parchment papers of the Gnostic Gospels. And in it, I read that Mary, the disciples, the male disciples were upset because Jesus would spend time with Mary. And they said, why are you spending time with Mary? And he said, I have made her male. This came to me. Remember the story I told you about how everything came together. Part of the Gospel of Mary is talking about everything that comes into one, light and dark, up and down, male and female, how the brain actually merges. And when he said, it was kind of code, but they understood it then, that Mary Magdalene was made male. What he was saying is, I've made her whole. She is complete now, not only with the feminine, but with the masculine, and everything in opposition to itself. And it was the first time in 20 years, after some of my experiences, I told you, we're skipping around in a couple decades here, that I had some confirmation of this experience of everything merging together. So then Mari flies back from San Francisco.
Yeah. And she's showing me and telling me the story, and I said, well, that's not Mother Mary. I said, that's Mary Magdalene. And I said, and look what I've been wearing in San Francisco. It was my mother's finger rosary that fit on me as a bracelet, but also has Mary in it. So I just thought, what an amazing thing that we are experiencing these things, and if we talk about them, we find this out. So this is what I'm really encouraging you to do, is to talk to people who get you about what you're going through, if at all possible, because you find the wholeness in the situation. Mary is so right on about this being about wholeness. It is about everything coming to wholeness. The first part is wholeheartedness, joining heart and mind. And I love how many people have come to their hearts. Really being, you don't know you're stuck in your head until you know you were stuck in your head. It's kind of like you say, oh, I was just interested in the meaning of that word. I didn't experience that. I didn't feel that. And so you really begin to come to wholeness that way. And I want to kind of wrap up, and then I'll let Mary wrap up too, but it kind of started out with potential and with something Jesus says about potential. He's talking about potential all through A Course of Love, and then he uses the word claim. Claim it, okay? He uses that 7 times. And this is all in the area of us discovering our freedom, in which we can be all of who we are, okay? We know who we are, we can be all of who we are through this freedom, through this healing, and he says claim. Claim your life. Claim your new identity. Claim your freedom. Claim your inheritance, your gifts, yourself. Claim your power. Claim your personal self again. Reclaim yourself and your purpose here. So that, going back to the beginning, potential is that which exists. And I'm going to link that to the same period as the Gospel of Mary. It will save you.
Spiritual writing, before I found this pendant, I was told this is the androgyny. And the androgyny was a very ancient word at one time, which doesn't mean, Leluc said, it does not mean, it's too confusing in today's time to understand it, but it means the divine human in terms of holiness and being on this planet right now, where everything comes together. So when I told my husband, again, I have this weird experience with everything coming together, and I heard androgyny. It was pronounced androgyny. And so he said, honey, you're blessed. Just be calm with all this. It's okay. And then it was actually years later that the experience I told you about. And this pendant actually was given to me, I thought it was from Mari, from another friend of ours that was a part of our spiritual journey, Julie, who had got it in southern France, had given it to me, and it was Mary Magdalene. So Mari kept saying, is there a baby on it? I go, no, there's no baby, there's a woman with a cross. And so I'm like, but it doesn't mean it's not Mother Mary. So, but I was thrilled that Mary Magdalene was a part of our story as well, that this blending and wholeness came together for us. So thank you. I think that's it for me.
Thanks to everyone here and every strong woman and all the energy that's coming up in men to bring their wholeness together. And I really hope we will all be pilgrims and pioneers of the new as Jesus asked us to be. Thank you. I know it's time to go, but if anybody has a question, or you can find us.